So in order to get ourselves familiarized with this concept of code commit and the code pipeline, we are going to use it in a hands-on manner. First, we are going to do a hands-on about this AWS code commit repository. Now in this AWS code commit repository, I'll be showing you the steps that you need to follow so that you can follow along with me and you can create a repository in AWS code commit service, and you are going to create a local repository. And once you create a local repository, you're going to perform the commit to the local repository and push the changes to the code commit. And at the end, once you push these changes to the code commit, so at the end, we'll also go ahead and see like how we can clean up those as well. So each and every hands-on session that I'll be demonstrating, it contains creation of services, usage of services, and at the end, we'll also stop those services so that we do not incur the billing. So that is how our learning journey will be. Now, once this hands-on will be completed, next, we all will move on to the next hands-on, where we'll be creating and deploying the application using code deploy and code pipeline. Now, here in this scenario, we are going to have a sample application. Now, using that sample application, we are going to store it in S3 bucket, and I'll show you how you can configure this S3 bucket in order to ensure that we use it for tracking those changes. And once we have the file, that is the application in our S3 bucket, next, we are going to create a pipeline which tracks the changes and which is going to deploy the changes to our AWS EC2 instances. So you'll get the complete overall idea about version controlling and also looking at this AWS code pipeline, which will help us to orchestrate each and everything which is present for CI/CD pipeline. So let's get started, and I'll go ahead and I'll start my AWS server. So I'll log into my system. So in case if you want to follow along with me, I recommend you to open the start your AWS at your system as well. So ensure that you log into your AWS system, guys. I'm logging to my system in parallel. Now, do remember whatever the activities that we'll be doing right now. So all these activities, you can do it with your free account as well. There's no if there is any charges, I'm going to share it right away and I'll mention it that, okay, you have to be careful. But I have ensured that most of the activities that I'll be doing, so you will be able to do it with your free tier account. You don't have to, you'll not be charged, but ensure that you track those resources and ensure that you follow the instruction so that at the end of the day, after you have done the practicing, you will have to ensure that those things at the end of the day, you'll have to ensure that uh, you have you have stopped all those services. Okay, so that's only one thing that you need to remember, guys. Now, okay, I've logged into my AWS account. So what you can do right now is, in order to work with this AWS code commit, so first thing is we are going to create a code commit repository. Now, code commit repository is very similar to what we are going to use it in GitHub. So in GitHub, we are going to store the code in the GitHub repository, right? In the same way, this code commit is a private repository. So only you and you can define the user access, like how you have to, what is the control that you want to give. You can control at the granular level using the IAM. That's the best part about AWS. And you can ensure that only few roles have the specific access. So you can say that, so only for few developers, you have the access to commit to the the master branch, and only let's say a senior developers has the access to the master branch, and only the junior developers will have only the copy function. They do not have the commit to the main branch. So you can set all those authorization. That's the best part about this AWS. Now, in order to start creating this repository, you'll have to search for code commit. Code commit is the service that we'll be using to create a repository. Now here, I'll just go to this get started screen. Now this will give you the overall information about this AWS code commit. So it clearly says AWS code commit, which will help us to create repositories for sharing the code in the cloud. It's a fully managed source control service that makes it easy for companies to host secure, this is most important, secure and highly scalable private Git repositories, which means there is no limitation on the space. So everything, it can be scalable, guys. It can be scalable, and it's a private Git repositories. So because of this, we don't have to worry about our own source control system or worry about scaling its infrastructure. Everything is taken care automatically for us. Everything is being taken care automatically for us by this AWS. Now you can check out the documentation. So from the perspective of examination, I highly recommend you to go through the documentation. So let me show you some of the important parts that you need to remember when it comes to documentation. So we'll open this user guide. So that will give you the overall idea about this AWS code commit. So this code commit is a service, and it is, since it's managed by AWS, so you can expect some of the questions related to how to clone the repository and how you can ensure that you can track the changes, everything. So this is the user guide of AWS code commit. Some of the important topics is about like using the grid credentials, how to set up the HTTPS connection for Git remote code commit, and integrate AWS Cloud9 with code commit. So there are some steps that are involved, which are like the information in nature. And yes, so here, some of the topics that I would recommend over here is IAM policies for the repository, IAM group, because most of the things, especially code commit, the questions that you can expect is related to the policies, how you have to set up the account, and what are the developers like, what are the roles that you need to assign. And I'll show you in our hands-on manner as well, but I'm just highlighting some of the important points so that you know what to look out for when you're doing the preparation for this examination. And the next topic that I would recommend you to pay close attention is managing the triggers for repository. So I'll give you a hypothetical example. Let's say as a developer, you have done some changes. Now, once you have done the changes, now it has committed to your local branch. I'll show you, I think if I explain it, it will be much better for you to understand. So this I'm going to say it as a child branch or a development branch, okay? And you have a production branch. So let's say this is your master branch, which is running. Now, there are some activities and everything, we call it as a trigger. Now, let's say when you commit something to a child branch or a development branch, so you want to do the code build, and then you have to, then you like once if someone commits the code, so you'll perform the code build. And once the code build has been done, maybe you want to send a message, maybe you want to send an email to the developer group. So you want to send an email to the developer group, so that you can control with the help of a trigger. Or there can be one more scenario, when a child branch has been committed, maybe you want to merge the child branch with your testing branch or something. Maybe you want to merge it, and if it was able to complete it automatically, trigger an email. Even if it fails, trigger an email as well, so that the relevant person can check and he can complete the required activity. Okay, so this is called as code managing the triggers for the repository. And so they like, it's about pushing the commits to two repositories. And these are some of the additional things which are not too much important from the examination perspective, but it's very important as you as you start working for your customers. How to manage the pull request, closing the pull request. It's very similar to what we'll have in Git, but they have explained in detail in this AWS code commit user guide. Okay.